I had just returned to my desk after a short break when something felt off. Two people were standing at my workstation. Both wore dark suits. Both had ID badges clipped neatly to their belts. One of them was wearing gloves, already opening my desk drawers as if this were routine. The other was photographing my computer screen, slow and methodical. My heart didn't race. It dropped. I walked closer, trying to keep my face neutral. "Is there a problem?" I asked. The taller one looked up. "Molly Davis." "Yes." "We're conducting a compliance inspection," he said, using a tone that sounded practiced, based on an anonymous report. Anonymous. I didn't need clarification. A few desks away sat Evelyn Grant, pretending to focus on her spreadsheet. She had joined Redwood Meridian Group just 4 months ago and happened to be the CEO's niece from the moment she arrived. She made it clear she believed my role should have been hers. I set my coffee down carefully. "Go ahead," I said. "You won't find anything." My hands shook slightly, not because I was hiding something, but because I knew exactly how far Evelyn was willing to go. She never hid her ambition. She interrupted meetings to clarify things I had already explained. She dropped her uncle's name casually, reminding people who truly held power. And me, I was the obstacle. I'd been here 6 years. I knew the systems, the regulations, the clients who trusted us with everything. My work wasn't loud, but it was solid, and that made her angry. The officers continued in silence, opening folders, checking files, exchanging glances that made the air feel heavier. Then the shorter officer opened my bottom drawer. His hand stopped. He pulled out a leather-bound folder I had never seen before and flipped it open. "Molly," he said slowly. "What is this? Printed emails? Annotated screenshots? Handwritten notes cataloging my supposed errors, exactly the things Evelyn had been whispering about for weeks. That file isn't mine," I said evenly. "It was in your desk, and yet," I replied, meeting his eyes, "it doesn't belong to me, behind me." I heard the faint sound of a chair shifting. Evelyn was watching. The officer kept turning pages. His expression changed. He showed something to his partner. They whispered. "Finally." He looked back at me. "Miss Davis, we need to speak with you privately." I nodded. "Because if they looked closely enough, they wouldn't find my mistakes. They'd find the truth. I hope you're doing well in your own way today, especially as the weather gets colder and things seem a little heavier on winter days like these. There's a simple yet comforting thing to do before bed. Soak your feet in warm water and spend a few minutes gently massaging them. You'll feel a noticeable difference. Where are you hearing this story from? And if this story has caught your attention, please subscribe to the channel to stay with me because things are about to start to change. They led me down the hallway without a word. The office noise followed us at first, keyboards tapping, phones ringing, someone laughing too loudly near the printer. Then the glass conference room door closed, and everything softened into a dull, sealed quiet. The taller officer pulled the blinds halfway down. The shorter one placed the leather-bound folder on the table between us, carefully, like it might bite. "Molly," the taller one said, "we're required to review any documents found at your workstation. Can you explain where this file came from?" I sat back, folded my hands, and met his eyes. "I've never seen it before today. It was in your desk. I understand," I said evenly. "That doesn't make it mine." The shorter officer opened the folder again. He slid out a page, an email screenshot showing incorrect policy terms sent to a client. I recognized it instantly. "That email was never sent," I said. "It was a draft." He paused. "It's time-stamped." "So is the corrected version," I replied, which was sent 10 minutes later. "That one is in the client record." They exchanged a glance, page by page. We went through it, a spreadsheet with numbers circled in red, except it wasn't the final version. The corrected file was still on the shared drive, with my digital signature and timestamp, notes accusing me of being careless, late, reckless with data. The handwriting was neat, rounded, looping. I pointed to it. That isn't my handwriting. The taller officer looked up. How can you be sure? Because I print in block letters, I said. Always. HR has samples. He wrote something down, after nearly an hour. The shorter officer closed the folder. Do you have any idea who might want to create documentation like this about you? I hesitated just long enough to look reluctant. I don't want to make accusations, I said carefully. But Evelyn Grant has made it clear she wants my position. She also has access to my desk. The drawers don't lock. They didn't react. But I noticed the way the name landed. When we returned to the floor, the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations lowered when I passed. A few people avoided eye contact. Others stared too long. Rumors travel faster than facts in offices like this. At my desk, Evelyn didn't look at me, but I could feel her confidence. Quiet and sharp. She thought the folder had done its job. She didn't know I'd been keeping records too. Not of mistakes, but of patterns. That night at home, I opened my laptop and pulled up my own archive system logs, client feedback, performance reviews, and one screenshot I'd saved weeks earlier. Evelyn had once accessed my account while I was out of the building. iLogs had captured it. I'd kept it, just in case. I closed the laptop and leaned back. Tomorrow, they'd ask more questions. And this time, I wouldn't just be defending myself. Something subtle shifted right here. Tell me you felt it. I arrived earlier than usual the next morning. The office lights were still dim, the air carrying that stale smell of yesterday's coffee. I wanted a few quiet minutes before everything started moving again. Time to think. Time to stay ahead. I didn't get much of it. At exactly 9:12, the compliance officers returned. They stopped at my desk first. "Miss Davis," the taller one said. Voice low but firm. "Do you have a moment?" Heads lifted around the floor. Conversations paused mid-sentence. I nodded, grabbed my notepad, and followed them back to the same glass-walled room. This time, someone else was waiting inside. Daniel Cross, our department manager. His posture was tight, hands folded on the table, eyes rimmed with the kind of red that suggested a bad night. He didn't smile when I sat down. "We've reviewed the material from yesterday," the taller officer began. "Some things don't align. We'd like clarification." He slid a printed page across the table. "The email screenshot from the planted folder, as you stated," the shorter officer said. "The draft was never sent. Client records confirm the final version matches your corrected email." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Next," the taller officer continued, placing another sheet down. "Access logs." He tapped the page. "3 weeks ago, your account was accessed from a different workstation while your badge shows you had already left the building." Daniel looked at me. "You were off-site." "Yes," I said. "Security logs will confirm it." The officer nodded. "They do." Silence stretched. "Do you know who accessed your account?" Daniel asked. I didn't answer immediately. I opened my notepad, flipped to a page with dates and times neatly written, and slid it forward. "You'll see the username in the log." I said, "It wasn't mine." The officer studied it. Daniel's jaw tightened. When I returned to my desk, the mood had shifted again. By lunchtime, whispers followed me down the hall. A coworker leaned in near the copier. "She's telling people you're being investigated," she said quietly. "That compliance is close to proving something." I nodded once. I wasn't surprised. Poison spreads fastest when it sounds confident. At 3:45, the officers came back. This time, they didn't stop at my desk. They stopped at Evelyn's. Her smile flickered as she stood. She followed them into the conference room. Shoulders squared, chin high, the blinds closed. Everyone pretended not to watch. 30 minutes passed, then 40, when the door finally opened. Evelyn walked out pale, jaw tight, eyes bright with something close to panic. She didn't look at anyone. The officers went straight to Daniel's office. That was when I knew. This wasn't about me anymore. As I packed up that evening, Daniel stopped by my desk. "Keep doing your job," he said quietly. "Don't engage." I nodded, but inside, I felt something settle. This wasn't survival now. It was momentum, because patterns don't lie. And once people start seeing them, they don't unsee them. The calendar invite arrived just after 8:30 the next morning. Compliance review, attendance required. Conference room B. My name was listed. So was Daniel's, HR, compliance, and, tellingly, Evelyn Grant optional. I printed nothing. I brought only my notepad and walked in exactly on time. The room felt staged, blinds half drawn, table cleared of clutter, the kind of space people choose when they don't want emotion getting in the way of process. The two compliance officers were already there. Across from them sat Lydia Moore from HR. Posture straight. Expression unreadable. Daniel took the seat beside her. Avoiding my eyes, Evelyn arrived last. She smiled too brightly, like someone stepping into a meeting she believed she could still control. The taller officer began without preamble. "We've completed a preliminary review of the materials discovered at Mrs. Davis's workstation." He slid the leather-bound folder onto the table, but this time, it wasn't facing me. It faced Evelyn. Her smile thinned. "We compared the documents in this folder to system records." The shorter officer continued. "Email logs, file histories, print metadata." He placed a page on top of the folder. The email screenshots were drafts. They were never sent to clients. Another page followed. The spreadsheets were earlier versions. The final. Corrected files remain on the shared drive with Ms. Davis's digital signature. Evelyn leaned forward. "People make mistakes before fixing them. That doesn't mean," the taller officer raised a hand gently. "Please let us finish." He placed another sheet down. "Print server logs show these documents were printed after business hours, using credentials tied to a single user account." He looked directly at Evelyn. "Yours." The room went very quiet. Lydia from HR folded her hands. Daniel stared at the table like it had personally disappointed him. Evelyn laughed once, sharply. "Anyone could have used my login. We share printers." "It wasn't a shared queue." The officer replied calmly. "Authentication was required. It verified the user hash." Her jaw clenched. "And finally," the shorter officer said, "the handwritten notes." He slid forward in large samples, one from the folder, one from Evelyn's onboarding paperwork. The handwriting matches. Evelyn stood up. "This is ridiculous. I was documenting concerns. Whistleblowing is encouraged here." "It is," Lydia said evenly. "Fabrication is not." Evelyn turned to Daniel. "You're really letting this happen?" Daniel looked tired, older than he had a week ago. "This is compliance," he said quietly. "I'm not intervening." The taller officer closed the folder. "Effective immediately, Ms. Grant. You are placed on administrative leave pending further review. You are not to access company systems or premises without approval." Evelyn's face drained of color. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to, because the story had changed, and everyone in that room knew it. If you're listening closely, you already know what's coming next. "Don't you?" Security walked Evelyn out quietly. No raised voices, no scene. Just a badge placed gently on the desk, a laptop sealed into a gray sleeve, and the soft click of the elevator doors closing behind her. The office didn't react the way movies pretend it does. No applause, no whispers loud enough to admit what everyone already knew. People went back to their screens, but the air had changed. At my desk, my monitor woke to the familiar dashboard, no warning banners, no access holds, ordinary work, waiting. I stared at it for a moment longer than necessary, letting the normalcy settle. Normal had felt far away for weeks. By midday, messages started coming in. Short at first. "Careful. Glad you're okay. Let me know if you need anything." One from a client, completely unaware of the storm inside our walls, thanking me for keeping things smooth as always. That one stayed with me. Early afternoon, Daniel asked me to step into his office. The blinds were open now. Sunlight spilled across the floor, catching dust in the air like proof that the room hadn't moved. Only the people in it had. I should have stopped this sooner, he said. Without sitting down, I saw the tension. I ignored it. I didn't rush to reassure him. Silence has a way of doing its own work. Compliance is expanding the review. He added, not just Evelyn. I nodded. I had expected that. An hour later, my phone rang. Internal extension. This is Marianne Cole, Director of Compliance. The voice said, calm, direct. I'd like to meet with you privately this afternoon. There's additional context you should be aware of. Context. The word felt heavier than it should have. Her office was on the 12th floor, glass walls overlooking the city. She gestured for me to sit and slid a thin folder across the table. The anonymous report wasn't anonymous. She said, it originated from an executive account. I didn't interrupt. Evelyn didn't act alone. Marianne continued, there was guidance, coaching, oversight that should never have existed. My stomach tightened, not in shock, but recognition. We're escalating this to the board, she said. Your record is clean, more than clean. Client trust, audit trails, peer feedback, it all aligns. She paused, studying me. What do you want moving forward? Molly. The question caught me off guard. I want my work to speak for itself, I said finally, and I want to stop watching my back. She nodded once. That's reasonable. When I returned to my desk, the corner office down the hall was dark, the nameplate still on the door, but the chair inside empty. Power leaves quietly when it's removed properly, and for the first time since this started, I felt something steady under my hands. Not victory, clarity. The following week moved differently. No announcements, no rumors confirmed or denied. Just a subtle tightening of process, extra approvals. Quiet calendar holds. People being pulled into rooms without explanation. The kind of movement you only notice once you've learned what to look for. Marianne asked for additional documentation. Not because she doubted me, but because she was building something larger than my defense. I spent 2 evenings reconstructing timelines, login histories, badge scans, printer queues, the kind of work no one applauds. Because when it's done right, nothing dramatic happens. Systems simply tell the truth. On Wednesday afternoon, I was asked back to the 12th floor, this time. Marianne wasn't alone. 2 board liaisons sat with her, tablets open, expressions carefully neutral. On the screen behind them glowed a matrix of dates and access points. Clean, unemotional. Walk us through it, one of them said. I did. I showed how the planted documents were printed after hours, how my account was accessed while I was logged out of the building, how edits appeared in drafts only during windows when I wasn't present. Each point anchored by logs, not opinion, no speculation, no accusation, just sequence. When I finished, no one spoke for a moment. Then Marianne tapped the screen and advanced the slide. This is where it widens, she said. Email threads appeared sanitized but unmistakable. Guidance on wording, suggestions on timing, a reminder to keep it anonymous. The sender wasn't Evelyn. It was her uncle. The board liaison exhaled slowly. So the complaint process was used to manufacture a case. Yes, Marianne said, and to shield it with family authority. Silence again. Heavier this time. What about intent? The other liaison asked. Marianne didn't look at me when she answered. Established, repeated, documented. I realized then that this meeting wasn't about deciding what happened. That decision had already been made. It was about deciding what to do with the truth. When I returned to my floor, the executive hallway was unusually quiet. A nameplate had been removed. The corner office door stood open, lights off. Desk cleared down to a single framed photo someone had forgotten to take. By Friday morning, the company-wide message went out. Brief, clinical. An executive had stepped down. An internal review was ongoing. Operations would continue without disruption. People read it twice, then once more, like they were searching for subtext. At my desk, work resumed at its old rhythm. Clients called, deadlines held. Trust, once shaken, began to settle back into place. That afternoon, Daniel stopped by. "You were right," he said simply, "about everything." I nodded, not in satisfaction, but closure, because this was never about winning. It was about removing weight from a system that couldn't carry it anymore. And once that weight was gone, everything else began to move the way it was supposed to. The absence was louder than any announcement. Evelyn's desk remained untouched, her chair pushed in neatly, like she might return after lunch. Her uncle's corner office stayed dark. No replacement nameplate, no temporary assistant, just space where authority used to sit. People noticed, they always do. But what changed wasn't gossip, it was behavior. Meetings started on time. Decisions were documented more carefully. People spoke slower, choosing words like they mattered again. Fear had a way of rushing conversations. Its removal did the opposite. Marianne called me late Tuesday afternoon. "We're nearing the end of the internal review." She said, "There's one more step." She didn't explain over the phone. When I arrived upstairs, the conference room felt different from before. No blinds drawn, no staged neutrality, just daylight and a long table with fewer chairs occupied. 2 board members were present this time, not liaisons, actual voting members. Older, experienced, the kind of people who didn't raise their voices because they'd learned they didn't need to. One of them spoke first. "We've reviewed the findings. Not just the misuse of the compliance process, but the pattern of influence surrounding it." He paused, choosing precision over comfort. "This didn't begin with you." I nodded. I already knew. "It won't end with you either." He continued, "Which is why we're asking something specific." Marianne slid a document toward me. A summary of corrective actions, structural changes, mandatory separation between reporting lines and family oversight, independent audits scheduled, not reactive, but permanent. "We'd like you to stay," she said. "Not just as an employee, but as someone we trust to notice when things go quiet for the wrong reasons." The room waited. "I'm not interested in power," I said carefully. "Only clarity." The board member smiled once. That's usually who should have it. When I returned to my desk, I found a message from a junior analyst I barely knew. "Thank you," it read, "for not backing down." I stared at it longer than I expected, because that was the part people misunderstood. I hadn't fought. I'd documented. I hadn't raised my voice. I'd waited. That evening, as I shut down my computer, the office felt lighter, not happier, just cleaner, like a system after corrupted files are finally removed. On my way out, I passed the compliance board posted near the elevators. New notices were pinned up, updated policies, clear reporting channels, names attached to responsibilities. Transparency doesn't arrive loudly, it settles. And as the elevator doors closed, I realized something quietly important. They hadn't buried me. They'd buried the story that tried to replace me. And once that story was gone, there was room again for work, for trust, for things that didn't need to hide in drawers. If you watch until the end, you will understand what everyone else missed. The board meeting wasn't dramatic. That surprised people later. When they asked, they expected raised voices, accusations, a moment where everything cracked open. Instead, it unfolded the way serious things often do, quietly, with weight. I wasn't invited to speak. I wasn't supposed to be. I was there to listen. The long table felt different, without familiar figures occupying their usual seats. Fewer interruptions. No casual authority drifting in late and steering the room by proximity alone. Each agenda item was taken in order. Each decision was documented before anyone moved on. Process. Restored. When Marianne summarized the findings, no one interrupted her. The misuse of the anonymous reporting channel, the coaching of evidence, the failure to recuse, the risk exposure that followed. It wasn't framed as scandal. It was framed as system failure because that's what it was. One board member asked a single question. How did this go unnoticed? No one rushed to answer. Finally, someone said, because it was quiet. The meeting ended with votes recorded and next steps assigned. No applause, no relief, just direction. When I returned to my floor, an all-hands message followed within the hour. It didn't name names,